Speaking of Cults podcast is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from it is at the user's own risk. The views, information, or opinions expressed by the host and guests are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical or other professional advice. Hello and welcome to the Speaking of Cults podcast. This is Chris Shelton, your host. Thank you very much for joining me again this week. I really appreciate your viewership. This week, we are diving, well, as deep as we can go into the world of MAGA and Mormonism. We have both of these things on the line. We also have the world of the trad wife, the traditional wife. In the evangelical religious world in America, this is very, very, very much an identity that is very popular and very talked about these days. Apparently, this is quite the rage on TikTok, and this sort of resuscitation or revitalization of the evangelical lifestyle as a mainstream cultural force has really been coming more and more to the fore over the last decade with the rise of Donald Trump and Christian nationalism. And so today, I welcome Jennie Gage as a guest to my podcast, and she is someone who has quite a few stories to tell and quite a lot to talk about when it comes to everything I just laid out, because she is someone who lived in that world, grew up in it, raised in it, as a Mormon, as a trad wife, as a MAGA supporter, Christian nationalist type approach. And so we're going to have a talk about all of that. And y'all know we talk about things from a cultic perspective, but I want to make it clear from the get-go that sometimes there's a very fine line between cult and culture. And because cult comes from culture, it's like a mini culture. But when it goes mainstream, you start seeing cultic activity on the part of millions of people. And it's a little hard to like, well, it's all just a cult. It's a cult culture kind of thing, but it all fits into the same psychology and sociology stuff we talk about here all the time. So enough with the intro. Let's get to it. Jennie, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be on your show today. I've been listening my heart out to some newer different episodes, and I don't know, it's kind of surreal to be your guest today. So thank you, Chris.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I very much appreciate you accepting my invitation here today. I want to know everything, and we don't have hours and hours and hours to talk, so we're going to have to crunch some stuff. But I guess first off, I want to know, and I know my viewers are going to want to know, what's the big broad picture here? You are you're living in Arizona. You were married to and deeply involved in Mormonism. How did this all come about? Were you born into a Mormon family? Did your parents convert? And then when does Mac come into this? I mean, what's the overview here?
Okay, the overview. Yes, I live in Arizona. It's one of the best states in America. So beautiful. Uh, and I was born and raised in the Mormon church. And that's a really important undercurrent of everything that happened in my life. I think that if I had converted, I may have had already a foundation in reality, but being born in the Mormon church, I was being taught things like how to use my toddler fork and the color blue and the color green and the color pink at the same time that I was being taught about Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon and Kolob and Elohim and all of those different things. And that's really important for people to realize as we look at MAGA, as we look at people who are like the hardcore Christians, those every beat of their heart, every breath that they take is their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and their church, whoever their pastor is, whatever their religion is. Those people typically are indoctrinated. Childhood indoctrination, in my opinion, should be illegal, but it's not. And I was deeply immersed in that. So my mom was multi-generations of LDS, so she wasn't really based in reality. Her reality also was reality as taught by Joseph Smith in the Mormon church. My dad was a new convert, and his story should be its own separate podcast. But what I didn't realize until when I left the Mormon church just 7 years ago, and my dad came out of the closet, was that he had lost his faith in the religion at their wedding but they were already married and he was deeply in love with my mom. So he just decided to kind of fake it till you make it for my entire childhood.
Oh,
So
wow.
so
Oh,
we had some
wow.
interesting dynamics there.
Yeah, you
And
did. Oh, my goodness.
I will say, if you're one of those parents who doesn't believe in the religion anymore and you're just doing it for the kids because you think that you need that religion for a solid foundation for your kids, I was mad at a lot of people in my life when I found out that the church wasn't true, that their truth claims couldn't possibly be supported by any evidence. But I was more angry at my dad than I was anybody else because, like, I just had this feeling of like, Dad, you knew it wasn't true. And you still drove me down to that church building. You still made sure I was baptized. You had the opportunity to say, hey, Jenny, maybe let's not be Mormon anymore. But you didn't. So um, I like
I
to say
get that.
that, yeah, like if you don't believe in your church anymore, step away and take your kids with you too. Let them know, be honest with them. Reality, like Chris, isn't truth and reality such an amazing perk?
I would rather live with a uncomfortable truth and a pleasing lie. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like to say that my childhood was a trad wife immersion program. Of course, I was born in the early 1970s, so we didn't call it a trad wife back then. I was a housewife or a homemaker. And as the oldest girl in a big Mormon family, nobody thought to educate me. That wasn't what God had made me for. Everyone made sure that I was pretty, that I knew how to flirt, that I dressed to attract the boys, and that I knew how to cook and clean and all those things. Chris, I remember being maybe 12 or 13 years old, and we had a Wednesday night activity down at my Mormon ward. And the activity was preparing for wifehood. Like that was the whole point of it. So we learned, all of our young women's leaders had brought ironing boards and white button down shirts. And so we learned how to starch and iron our future husbands' shirts. We learned how to do some basic cooking. So we made a big spaghetti dinner that night for the young men. We learned how to sew a button on a shirt and some other skills. And I remember even at the time as this middle school girl thinking, why am I learning? Like, I'm never going to wear this shirt. Why am I learning how to starch and iron a men's shirt? But they made it really clear. We're teaching you to be good wives.
Right.
So yeah, so my childhood was an immersion program and growing up and being a wife. I did register myself and find the money to go to college when I was 17 years old. I went to a Mormon school. It was called Rick's College at the time. It's now BYU, Idaho. It's the big BYU's little sister up there in Rexburg. And I was surrounded by a lot of men in my life, which is an interesting tidbit in my story because, yes, I was being instilled with these gender roles, but my dad was a really dynamic personality with a very, somewhat cool life. And my mom was the only sister. So, the only daughter in her family. So she had all of these brothers. One of my brothers one of my uncles was a corporate patent attorney for Greyhound Armored Dial. Another uncle was an attorney. For somebody else. One of them worked for IBM. One became an architect. So all of my uncles were these big dynamic personalities. And growing up, even being like infused with gender roles like I was watching the men live happy lives and then standing in the kitchen peeling potatoes on Sunday after church with the women, kind of thinking, this sucks. So I decided at age 17 that I was going to break out of that, peeling potatoes in the kitchen and having babies mold, take myself to college and become a corporate patent attorney. The Iron Curtain had just fallen. I majored in Russian with political science and pre-law as my minors.
Wow.
But
Wow,
yeah,
you really went for it.
I
Learning
know,
Russian, that's like pretty like
yeah.
wow.
The Iron Curtain had just fallen, right?
Yeah,
So
no,
it's
that's
like,
awesome.
I think it was one of my uncles who said, trade law is really great. And Russian's a great language. Russian or Chinese right now are the languages for that. So go for it, Jenny. So I get to college, and before school started, we had like this, student week where we made sure that we had all of our classes and stuff, and we knew our way around campus. And I sat down with my LDS counselor, and I had 21 credits in Russian pre-law, all this stuff. And my counselor, his name was Brother Bake, like bake a cake. Brother Bake said, Sister Fisher, I'm just noticing that you have kind of a confusing schedule. What do you hope to do with this? And I said, I want to be a Russian speaking international trade attorney. That's what I'm going for. And, Brother Bake read a couple scriptures to me about women staying home and being wives and moms, and read a couple directives from the Mormon prophets. And he said, Sister Fisher, the fact is, you will be a wife and a mom. You'll probably meet a return missionary and fall in love this semester. And then I will be doing a disservice to you and whoever is helping pay for college if we keep you in this track. So he literally stripped my schedule of all but my Russian and one pre-law class, and gave me a Book of Mormon class, a dating and marriage class, an early childhood development class. And I had that
Wow.
little bit of a comeuppance in college. So
Oh my God. And he just said, this is how it's going to be.
yeah,
You're paying for this college, and we're going to tell you what you're going to get to do.
but that's what the Mormon prophet teaches. So
Right.
just a couple of years before I went to college in 1992 was when I started college. Some of the prophets had made, public directives, which are commandments. Women come home from the typewriters, come home from the laundromat, come home. A mother's place is in the home. During women's lib in the 60s and 70s, women were working more, and the Mormon church didn't like that. So it was doctrinal for women to stay home with children by way of command, not just suggestion, which is really unique. I don't think that a lot of other religious people, like my partner is Lutheran, and he was stunned when we started having conversations about doctrine regarding women working. He was like, all of my Lutheran friends worked, the moms all worked, because being productive and working as a partnership is valued over having the stay-at-home mom situation. So I would imagine that Brother Bake was under a specific directive from the prophet of the church, the dean of Rick's college, and whoever was upstream from him, that any young woman that came in, I don't think that he was acting, I don't think he was going rogue.
Right.
That was the policy. That was the policy.
Wow. This is a very interesting side of this, because I've dived pretty deep into Mormon history and Mormon organization on this channel, and speaking with many ex-Mormons and people who understand the Mormon world. And I'm still surprised, to learn new things every time I dive into this world. How
It's complex.
well, it
It's very
is
complex.
clearly a bit more controlling than they lead the outside world to believe, because the Mormons present themselves as pretty progressive people to the outside world. But what you're describing is the opposite of progress and forward motion. You're talking about pushing you back into the dark ages in terms of these, traditional gender roles, which we need to kind of move on from, because the world is not how it used to be.
Yeah.
My hot take, but you had to
Good
live
one.
this. I mean, Jesus, like, you want to go off and pursue something professional and amazing for yourself, and it's like, oh, that's very nice, little girl, but here's your home ec class instead, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, I mean, that's well, in a word, that's fucked up. And I get to say that on my show, because I get to talk like that on my own show. So, so wow. Did you see this as a common problem with other women in your vicinity? I mean, was this kind of just, or did you see other people breaking out of this? Was this in other words, could somebody blame this on, well, you just kind of went along with it, it's not really that way? Or is this more like a common problem in the Mormon world?
Well, I didn't see it at the time as a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say too that I know that
Mm-hmm.
you've had a lot of ex-Mormons on your show, and I hope that I can make the list of one of your favorite. You have a lot of favorite ex-Mormons. I at least want to be like top 20, so I'll work really hard to earn that.
Wow. Well,
um,
thank you, Jenny.
a lot of the ex-Mormons that you've had in your show are younger than me. And being almost 52, I lived with a very different form of Mormonism than what they are projecting now. I will say the doctrines haven't changed, but the image, the branding, they're slapping lipstick on a pig. The doctrines are still there and nothing has actually changed, but the imaging and the branding certainly has. So in my generation, I would have been the extreme outlier had I just said, I don't want to get married, or I don't want to have children. It was a commandment to have children. There was not a Mormon girl that I knew who didn't immediately get to work having babies. Um, so I just to kind of follow up with college. So I, had my schedule stripped, but I
Yeah.
poured my heart and soul into everything. And then I was engaged within just 2 months. So I was 17 when I started college. At age 18, a cute Mormon boy proposed to me and I said yes. He unfortunately hadn't served his mission yet. So I was going to wait for him during his mission. That didn't happen because I was forced to marry somebody else while he was gone, another returned missionary. And I met my now ex-husband at age 19. By 20, we were married. We got married. Our 11th date was our wedding.
Wow.
And um, right after we got married, so even when you get married, you go to the Mormon temple, you have to have your temple recommend. So I can't just be like, hey, I'm a Mormon. I'm going to go to the temple. I'm going to get married. You have to sit down with your bishop, who's your local pastor. And then you have to sit down with the stake president, who is over 12 Mormon wards. So he's kind of higher up the chain. And they both have to interview you. And the interview questions are things like sexual purity. And do you pay your tithing? Do you honor the word of wisdom by not smoking, drinking coffee, consuming alcohol, things like that. So you have to go through this stringent interview to make sure that you're pure and worthy to go into the temple. So my fiance and I, Jake, we went through this, our independent, separate interviews together. And when I got to my stake president, the stake president decided to give me all of this marital counsel. And he told me, you're stepping into something that is eternal. You cannot break this. There is no divorce. You can never break a temple ceiling. So this decision, when you guys kneel at that altar, this is forever. And you will be under command. You take an oath in the temple as part of your wedding to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And that's an oath on your life, literally, that you will have babies. So he told me, he's like, I know probably a lot of your friends are on birth control and stuff, but don't ever do that. Let God be your birth control. He will open your womb as he has children to send down to earth for you. So don't do birth control because that's a sin. And make sure that you honor your husband because he is now your head. So,
Wow.
yeah. And
Wow. This
so
is
again,
so much more commanding and controlling than the Mormons present themselves. You're right about the marketing, and it's
yeah,
really not a whole lot different with Scientology, by the way. I mean, they've just repackaged and remarketed the same crap. Decade after decade, there's been a new sort of positioning and marketing with that. And I know that Scientology takes a lot of its cues from the Mormon Church, in a lot of
that's
ways.
scary.
In a lot of ways. I know David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology, watches the Mormon Church very carefully and uses the same kinds of promotional campaigns and attitudes and things because Scientology is sort of a mini me of Mormonism in a lot of ways. It's a significantly smaller version than the Mormon Church, but a lot of the same um, technique
Tactics. Yeah,
tactics.
techniques.
That's right.
I
There you
guess
go.
my tactics is a little bit more dark and accusatory. Techniques.
I'll stick with that. I'll go with
Yeah.
tactics because these are dark subjects. And when we talk about religion, you're talking about something that is near and dear to the identity of most human beings. This is very, very important stuff that people have the right to believe what they want when it comes to the afterlife and their relationship with the universe and stuff like that. These are beliefs, these are ideas that people have, and they are very closely held. And sometimes they're very powerful and can create quite powerful emotional moments. And I don't want to deny that to anybody. But what you're discussing and what I've spent so much time discussing is when those ideas become a lever or a cudgel to control people and beat them into submission to the point with, in the evangelical Mormon trad world, submission is a feature, not a bug.
Their phrases, there's the marketing is genius, right? Because it's like, oh, that's a beautiful thing. So from childhood, we would march around our little children's ministry singing the song, Follow the Prophet, Follow the Prophet. And your primary teacher would just walk around the room and you'd march behind. And if she went left, you went left. And she went right, you went right. Um, you were taught these beautiful little things that, oh, that seems beautiful. Follow the prophet. Obedience with exactness was a phrase. To be like a child, innocent and pure and free of will. Humility, that was everything. And it was all about somebody else controlling you.
Yeah.
I never felt like I could make any of my own decisions. In Mormonism, the end goal, obviously, is the celestial kingdom where you become a god and a goddess. And there are people, you'll see these Mormon creators, and they're like, you can make any choice you want to in the Mormon church. You can get tattoos, you can drink coffee. Yeah, but if you're trying to get from point A, which is where we are now, to point B, which is that eternal life, there's only one track. Straight is the narrow, or straight is the path, narrow is the way that leads to eternal life. And there's only one way. So yeah, you can choose to drink coffee, and then you're not going to the celestial kingdom. You're not going to become a god and a goddess. You can choose not to get married and not have babies, and then you're burning in Mormon hell, which is actually called the celestial kingdom, but it's still hell, right? They even have nice branding on hell. So in my life growing up, I was taught basically how to get to that pin drop. You wear long skirts, you don't let boys touch your genitals or your boobs, and you don't touch theirs. You don't cuss. You make sure you go to church every Sunday. You go to your young women's activities and stay away from R-rated movies, and don't listen to Madonna music, and don't dress like a hoe, all this stuff. Like, if you do those things, and most of my growing up years were just memorization of rules. Things like tank tops, bad. It was in the For Strength of Youth pamphlet, and some of the other things that I've mentioned. And rather than just learning critical thinking and intuition, and what do I like to do in a day, I was memorizing, here's what I should do. And those rules pervade really every day of your life. So Sunday is church, which used to be 3 hours long. Now it's 2 hours long. And then choir practice and young women's meetings and different things like that. And as I grew up, then obviously I had callings as an adult. And then Monday night is family home evening. So we'd go to school and then come home, do a little bit of homework. And we didn't play it with friends on Mondays. We spent Monday night popping popcorn, and then my parents would teach a spiritual lesson that would reinforce whatever happened in church on Sunday to kind of drive that indoctrination in. And then Wednesday nights, we had youth activities. Saturday nights, we had usually ward activities, potlucks, things like that, and dances. And sometimes there were activities too on Friday nights. So Tuesday was a day off from church. Thursday was a day off from church. Friday was sometimes a day off from church. But then the rest of the week, we were literally engaged in doing stuff with our ward. And that's not all. You're under command to read your scriptures as a family every single day. You are under command to be studying. Oh, you know what? I forgot about seminary. Once you get to high school, I had a pull-out class. So my, third period or sixth period, I was sitting in the seminary building, missing out on one of my high school credits so that I could be 5 days a week. So those last 4 years at home, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at high school, Wednesday night youth activities, Monday nights family home evening, Saturday dances, Sunday. There was never a day that I wasn't involved in something with the Mormon church. They keep you so busy, and you are just being indoctrinated, reinforced. And I would say that, like, looking back on my life, I didn't have emotions. I didn't think. I was just kind of walking through high school, college years, my married years. I was this little robot that had been very carefully planned. And how controlling are they? They picked my husband, forced me to marry him. They tell you how many babies to have. There are commands of what to wear. Like, I had my Mormon garments, so tank tops, crop tops, short shorts were out. My very underwear, the fabric on my private parts was given to me. I had to purchase it from the Mormon church. I could not go to Target and just say, you know what, this week I'm going to wear some Hanes. Ever. The underwear on my body, the food that I ate, everything about me was given to me by my church. And Chris, I think that should be illegal, literally,
I
for
agree.
random people to have that level of control over anybody, for someone to tell you who you should marry, how many kids you should have. They don't know me. They didn't know my life. They didn't know my health, my mental health, my capacity to parent. They didn't know anything. They had warm, fuzzy feelings that they thought came from God, and they shoved those down my throat. And that was how I lived. Nobody should have that level of control over anybody.
No, they shouldn't. They absolutely shouldn't. And I think you're absolutely right about the childhood indoctrination. Isolation, manipulation, and control. That's how you engage in coercive control. And when you engage in that kind of isolation and those kind of language, commandments, commands, the submission, these are strong words. And when you introduce these to children who have no capability, and this is a stump speech speech I've made on a stump many times, so I'm going to keep it short, but it just really, really, really makes me mad when I hear about having myself, experience some version of that, even as a little boy, because we didn't have traditional gender roles in Scientology. It was whether you're a boy or a girl, you're getting this, and this is how it is, and you're gonna, this is the truth, right? So different but same, right? Different but same in terms of this is a worldview we're putting over your head, and there's no visor on this helmet. The helmet it covers your face. This is the world as we want you to see it and as we want you to live. And we're going to control your entire life from beginning to end.
Because people see people walking around in society free, and they don't realize the invisible chains that
Right.
people like me live with. Because it's like, oh, you live in Gilbert, Arizona, you're surrounded by other people. She's not in a cult. That cult bubble, though, rather than building a cage around where everybody, Jamestown, something like that, right? Um, Cultic people used to isolate, and they literally would all move to the same town. We don't do that as much anymore. But I say, rather than building walls around me, they put the walls inside my brain.
Right.
And the mind control was so absolute. I didn't date non-Mormons. My parents didn't hang out. My mom didn't have a single friend that wasn't LDS. I was not allowed to go to the birthday parties of non-Mormons. My whole entire world was just in this little LDS bubble. And if my neighbors had seen me, it's like, Jenny's living out there in society. But I really wasn't. I was terrified. I was terrified of all of my non-member neighbors. Some of them had coffee pots, and horrible, horrible things like that, right?
I have questions about some of that. Yeah, let's talk about that. First off, social isolation. It's the prison of belief. And that's that is the best three-word description of any cult, right? It's a prison of belief, religious or not. It's belief that is trapping you, and there are no walls, none anywhere that man will build that are more powerful than the ones that you build in your head.
Can I give you an example of that?
Please.
When I was maybe in my 30s, I don't know the exact year, I don't remember, but I remember that I was a young mom, and I was one of the young women's leaders. I was in the young women's presidency, and the prophet at the time, Gordon B. Hinckley, this little white-haired grandpa, like all of the Mormon prophets are, because they're ancient. We had this worldwide broadcast just for women. And in this worldwide broadcast, the prophet, the true prophet, seer, and revelator for God, spoke to all of us about tattoos and piercings. And he said, you shouldn't have any tattoos. People ask me all the time, how many tattoos should you have? You should have none. And on the topic of piercings, and again, this was like a 90-year-old man at the time, he said, I don't think that Heavenly Father wants anyone to have more than a single piercing in the ear. So if you have 2 piercings, then that is too many. I was sitting in a Mormon church that was full to capacity. I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe 1,000 women in this broadcast over the satellite. And I had like a little hoop earring and then a little stud next to that. I personally had 2 earrings in each ear. And I felt so shamed in that moment that, like, what was I thinking by getting a second piercing in? Women, young women, I was girls age 12 all the way, through adulthood, their moms, their aunts, grandmas that were there. You saw women taking out their earrings and putting them in their purses because we believed that the prophet spoke directly for God. I had a cousin who had all these little beautiful tattoos, because tattoos had been a little bit of a gray area up until that point. After the prophet spoke that, she paid thousands of dollars to have her tattoos removed. I had a friend
Yeah.
who couldn't pass the sacrament anymore. His bishop said, you can't pass the sacrament unless you remove those tattoos, because he had visible tattoos under his cuffs. We believed that tattoos and piercings were evil. So that Sunday before I went to church, I loved that second earring. I had a little diamond in that second hole, and I took them out and I
Yeah.
let those grow back.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because if you were
We
to sit
believe.
somebody, well, exactly, and if you were to sit somebody like the prophet down, these old white guys who inevitably end up running the Mormon church, and there was like a string of about 15 of them, who was coming next and next and next and next after that, and it ain't any progressive women, I can tell you that. Um, it's amazing to me from the outside and from this position I'm in now to see the care and attention to things like tattoos and piercings in the face of world hunger and homelessness and social problems all throughout the state of Utah, all throughout the United States. And this is what the prophet is going to come and talk to all the women about. I mean,
A
it's
second
laughable,
earring.
isn't it?
It is.
It's like so insanely stupid that you wonder from the outside, once you get out, how did I, right? Because I get it. I get it. And it is just so frustrating. The
I never thought
laughter.
about it like that, Chris.
Yeah.
It is laughable.
It is, isn't it? It's laughable how stupid these people are and how wrapped up they get. And I include myself in that. So when I start throwing the word stupid around, I mean, we weren't letting ourselves think. It's not that we couldn't think, we wouldn't let ourselves think. And that's the only place where stupid really gets to come into the picture when it comes to cults. We weren't stupid for being raised in a cultic environment. We had no choice.
Right.
Our critical thinking was never asked for and not wanted when it appeared. We were raised in environments of compliance. This is what you do, and if you don't do these things, you are bad and you're not going to get your ultimate reward. And when you're telling a 5-year-old that, you're a fucking asshole.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little like peeved today, so I'm kind of talking like that. But
I agree 100%.
yeah,
And I would love to see an anti-childhood indoctrination bill that protects
yes,
children, because, I pioneered Exmo TikTok, and I found myself leaving the Mormon church and suddenly hearing from millions of people around the world who were deconstructing different religions and leaving. And the ex-Mormons, of course, always have a soft spot in my heart. Um, I heard the ones that bothered me the most were the teenagers.
yeah,
I would have a gay girl in Ogden who would come into my DMs on my TikTok and say, my parents are forcing me to go to church. I'm a freshman in high school. I'm gay. They are terrible to me. They treat me like crap, and I don't want to go to girls' camp. I don't want to go to Young Women's on Wednesday night. I don't want to go to church. And the parents were forcing, all of the stories, the horror stories that I heard about kids being forced on missions. I'd have missionaries reach out to me and say, can you help me? I'm stuck on this mission. I don't have my passport. I can't get home. My parents, and they're going to disown me. They're not going to pay for college. The crazy thing is, we live in the United States of America, and I don't know if you've heard of the anti-establishment clause, but the government can't force anyone, they can't force religion on us. We have freedom of religion. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. And every citizen is born with that right to choose their own religion. So when parents force even a minor child to participate in religion, and when parents indoctrinate children into what, by all purposes, is mythology, it's horrifying. It seems like it shouldn't happen in America.
that's right. It does seem like that. And originally, under the original sort of framework of this whole setup, that was the idea. And that this would be this melting pot. This is what we grew up with. I mean, this was the thing that we were taught, at least in the public schools. Of course, this is running right up against what we were taught at home. So, you have this going on. But now it feels to me, and I'm very keen to hear your input on this. it feels like there has been this sort of second America. You referred to Bernie's video the other day,
I
and
love him now. I never
oh,
used
isn't
to
he
be.
awesome? Isn't he awesome? Yeah, Bernie's a great guy, and he's definitely got some very humanistic ideas. He's
Mhm.
very, hey, egalitarian. Let's like distribute power evenly, and yet this seems to be this second America is sort of this evangelical Christian thing that sort of is this undercurrent that has been throwing acid on our Constitution and on our Bill of Rights ever since we came around, ever since we
Mhm.
were founded as a country.
Well,
And
before
we are now,
that.
well, yeah, and I mean, Protestantism and all that, but we're now seeing the rise of people who, in this, as represented in this whole evangelical Christian nationalist MAGA thing, we're seeing a welding of, and it's been happening our whole life,
Mhm.
because it was in the 70s and 80s that the marriage of these things began. And now we're seeing the fruits of that, right? Which is that there's an effort by our government to exert the same level of control over all of the citizens that you just described was exerted against you as a child
Mhm.
growing up. And and
Terrifying.
I can't think of a better way to summarize what's going on right now than than that. And they want to
Amen.
treat all of us like children, right? And I am horrified by that, and that's what it compels me to want to expose this nonsense and talk with people like you who were in that world and can now speak very honestly about what it's like.
Mhm.
um, so you have a childhood which is priming you and indoctrinating you and literally brainwashing you with the amount of repetition we're talking about here
Mhm.
into submission. Your job is to submit to whoever the guy is that you connect with. Is that basically the core message? And
Absolutely.
the church's doctrines?
I was to submit to my husband, my father, the bishop, the stake president, the prophet, Jesus, Heavenly Father. I was the bottom rung on that shelf.
Right.
But they didn't tell me that. They didn't say you're to submit to all these people. Literally in my wedding, though, I did have to bow my head and take an oath. And I'm older than some of your other ex-Mormons that you've had on. So
Sure.
in 1995, when I got married, I was rubbed down naked underneath a little sheet without any permission. And then I had to take an oath that I would obey my husband and that I would literally listen to him as he listened to the Lord. This was acted out. Adam and Eve. God tells Adam, I'm now the mouthpiece. You're now the mouthpiece. You're over Eve. So Eve gets to me through you. That was an oath that I took. Congratulations on your wedding. I submit to Jake.
Ugh. Ugh. Ugh.
Yeah.
It's just mental psychological slavery and it's gross.
It's
I
literal slavery. It's
It
slavery
is
in every way. And I was
it
a
is.
physical
Is it
slave.
not?
Like,
Is
yeah,
it not? You might as well just put the goddamn collar on. It's
yeah.
so ridiculous. Oh, it just infuriates me. So, okay. Um, so how was it that you mentioned your husband was chosen for you? I'm curious about that. Can you tell me what went down there?
Mormons don't use common sense a lot. I mean, just the doctrine. I won't say all Mormons. I want to be really careful about religious people are taught in general to listen to the Holy Ghost first and foremost, to listen to the promptings of the Spirit, those convictions, whatever religion is, we have that phrasing. So a good Mormon is going to pray about things to get answers rather than writing out a list. In fact, I went to church this Sunday, and the pastor at a non-Mormon church talked about how that he had a really good job, and his wife was really happy where they were living in Colorado. And then this spirit came and wrote on his heart that they were supposed to move to Tucson, Arizona, and it flew in the face of reason. But here they are because Jesus told them that they were supposed to do that. So emotions are turned into reality, and they are used as a compass, as a GPS for your life. And I think that that's one of the most problematic aspects of Mormonism is that you have all of these leaders over you who aren't using common sense. They wake up in the morning and their stomach growls and they're like, I think that Sister Gage should be the organist. And
Right.
through no common sense, through no logic, I made most of my life decisions based on emotions. And I would think that I was channeling the Holy Ghost, right? Sometimes even like a fortune cookie. Like I'd open up a fortune cookie and it's like, tomorrow you should help a neighbor. So I'm like, oh, that's Jesus telling me I should help a neighbor tomorrow.
Right.
I was very emotional dominant. So all of the priesthood leaders around me were also very emotionally dominant. That's how they made their decisions.
Yeah.
They always felt like they were the mouthpiece of the Lord. So I had this grown ass adult who was a leader throughout my childhood in our stake. He was the young men's leader. He was over like the kids that are getting ready to go on their missions. And him and his wife were about like 15 years older than me. And they were really cool. They were the youth leaders that everyone was like, we want to be them. They looked like Ken and Barbie. They had a second home over in Maui. They were rich as fuck. They owned all these health clubs. And so just that power dynamic, I looked up to this man so much. And he had a little project, this kid that he had helped get out on his mission. And in Mormonism, you can't go to heaven unless you are married. There's no single people in heaven. It's not like, the Catholics, those nuns, they're the original feminists, right? They don't have to get married. In Mormonism, if you're not married, you are just a servant to the gods and goddesses. If you're married, you get to become a god and goddess. So,
I have to stop you for a second just
yeah.
because to comment on the fact that I don't think I've ever twigged on that.
What? It's the
I
whole
don't
point of the
think
Mormon church.
no, I get it. I knew about celestial kingdom. I know about family and eternal family, but I never put two and two together that you had to be married in order to
Yes.
get to. I just hadn't. Thank you for putting that so clearly. You've said a few things today that are very clarifying. I really appreciate it.
There's eternal sex too. Do you know about that? Like you're
What's that
literally
now?
going, there's eternal sex. So when you're God and goddess, then you have sex because you're literally bearing spirit children.
Oh boy.
I'm a child of God. I was a literal child of Elohim and one of his celestial wives, my heavenly
Oh, is
mother.
that how new little people are made?
Yeah, that's how new spirits are made. You live in the pre-existence, you
Oh,
live in the past life, the pre-earth life. So for anyone listening, you can just do
yeah.
a simple Google search of Mormon pre-existence, LDS pre-existence, the LDS pre-earth life, and the keyword plan of salvation. That term will take you to before we came to earth, we lived just like we're living now. We had our own personalities and stuff, but we were literally born. Our spirit bodies were given birth to. So that's one of the perks of the celestial kingdom is that you get to have sex. Because if you're creating other earths, which is the whole point of the plan of salvation in Mormonism, then you have to be married. That's the
Right.
point. So if you're unmarried within Mormonism, if you haven't found your eternal companion, you can still go to the celestial kingdom. You can live with God, but you are a ministering angel or a servant to the gods. You yourself don't get to create planets and be a god.
Wow. Wow. And again, you sit somebody, and I love the way that you said, because it's just probably one of the most accurate things I've ever heard about Mormons or about cults in general, is that common sense has absolutely nothing to, it's out of the picture. There is no part
Yeah.
of this that is common sense, because none of this makes any sense. If you were to challenge even the smallest part of this, it all just starts unraveling so quickly to an objective mind. I mean, just to make this comment real fast, then we'll get back to what you were saying. That the coffee. What the fuck are you talking about? I can't drink coffee. God has a problem with coffee. So is everybody in Peru just an asshole then? I mean, what are you talking about? That's where coffee comes, right? Like
Yeah.
places that grow coffee, right? Like is all of South America just damned then
Yes,
in
they
the
are.
eyes of God
Uh-huh.
because they
Yeah.
make coffee? Like, are
Yes.
you kidding me right now? It just all falls apart so quickly. That thread out of the sweater. What are you talking about? I can't. I just can't with some of this stuff. The micromanagement of people's lives is just it just goes to these insane levels. But again, you were doing such a great job. Sorry, I totally just what happened? So this guy comes back from this mission. He's this guy's project.
Yes.
How
Yes.
do yeah? What
I was
happened?
trafficked. I was trafficked, and I say
Oh
that
my
all the
God.
time. I stand by that. And the first person who noticed that I had been trafficked was the trauma and abuse therapist that I was court ordered to see after some horrifying domestic violence episodes at the hands of my ex-husband, where he went back through, how long have you guys known each other? Da, da, da. And I just told him, I was like, oh, it was really neat the way that we met. And he's like, wait, hold on, you were trafficked. you were trafficked. You were trafficked, right? And I was like, no, like I wasn't a prostitute or anything. And he was an expert who worked with trafficking victims. And he's like, this is why you're trauma bonded. I was diagnosed with Stockholm syndrome. I was forced to marry a man that I did not know because my priesthood leaders knew that this man who had just come home from his mission, Jake, he had to have a bride if he was going to get to the eternal, the celestial kingdom and become a god. So I was sitting at I was waitressing at the Olive Garden one night when this priesthood leader that I had known my whole childhood comes in and sits down. Again, I thought they were so cool. They'd just come home from Hawaii. They were so cool. And as I'm literally they ordered capellini pomodoro that night. They split it. They ordered 2 raspberry lemonades and Alfredo sauce for their breadsticks. And as I was grating the Romano cheese over with a little Olive Garden cheese grater over their capellini pomodoro, he says, Jennie, because he knew me my whole life. He goes, Jennie, Holy Ghost is telling me something right now. I know your husband. I have this returned missionary. His name is Jake. I need your phone number. God is telling me that the two of you are supposed to be married. Now, I was already engaged to the first guy that I had met at Rick's, right? He was off on his mission, and we were actually supposed to get married just a couple months from them. And I had waited the whole 2 years for my missionary to come back. I had planned the whole wedding, and I was like, yeah, I'm engaged, sorry, to somebody else. And throughout the course of just me being their waitress at the Olive Garden that night, this guy spiritually manipulated me by pulling out all the stops. Jennie, I've been praying about this for so long. Jake's been home from his mission for 4 months, and they're under command to get married as soon as they can. Now, guys these days don't do that as fast. But again, in the early 90s, that was, you'd come home from your mission and they say, now go find your wife. You can't have sex until you're married and you're endowed. You've been a returned missionary. So the purity standards are super high. They want him to come home and get married as fast as they can. So he's like, I've been praying about this. And, Jennie, like the minute I saw your face, just the Holy Ghost was screaming to me. So by the time these guys were done eating dinner, and now, again, this was a priesthood leader that I had absolute respect for. I believed that he spoke for God. I believed in that hierarchy that the priesthood leaders receive revelation for people. For me, I'm just this lowly woman. And I had also been to Rick's College for a couple of years where that's what had been taught, that you're going to know your eternal companion by the Holy Ghost telling you. And I had so many friends who I walked into my class the first day and I saw this guy sitting back there and the Spirit told me that that was my husband. My patriarchal blessing, which is that could be its own episode going into patriarchal blessings, had told me that the Spirit would tell me when I met my husband. So I gave them my phone number. I wrote it down in a receipt. I said, have Jake call me. He went home that night. He called Jake. He said, I just found your wife. Here's her phone number. So we go out on a first date. On the second date, he molests me aggressively. He sets up an appointment for us to repent to the bishop. The bishop says, now that he's done that to you, you guys have to get married. And I was like, I'm engaged to somebody else. This is our second date. I don't even want a third date with this guy. And the bishop said, there's no way in hell that your returned missionary is ever going to want to see you again after what you just did with Jake.
Oh my God. Fuck these guys. Jesus Christ.
So
this is the worst story I have ever heard along these lines with the Mormons. This is awful.
I've heard worse. I've heard.
I'm sure you have. Because oh no, no doubt.
Yeah.
I'm just saying no one's laid this level of control on me when it comes to this interpersonal relationship stuff in the Mormon church. This is horrible.
Yeah. So we went in, I go to church that Sunday. We got on that second date in a hot tub, with absolute no consent on my end whatsoever. And I was this girl raised in this purity culture where that wasn't my life, at all. I was out with a returned missionary. I had this expectation of he was going to be this good guy, right? I could trust him. So we're in a hot tub and he does things to me. And I just remember driving home that night, crying my eyes out, Like I've been defiled, I've committed sins, and I didn't even know what to say. I didn't know what to do. We just happened to go to the same ward. He had just come home from his mission and we were in the same singles congregation. So I had to play the piano that day. Otherwise, I just wouldn't have even gone to my ward, but I was the ward pianist. So I walk into church that day and here's this guy who just assaulted me. And he's sitting there in his little suit and tie. And he's like, yeah, I've made an appointment to talk to the bishop. We have to repent. And even being dragged into the bishop's office like that, the fact that, again, that belief, why did I walk into the bishop's office? Because I believed that I had been taught my whole life that if somebody's trying to rape you or molest you or do anything to you, whatever the level of intrusion is, that I was to fight, even if it meant losing my own life. You know, the classic, if a guy climbs into your bedroom window to rape you and he has a gun, then say, shoot me, because I would rather be shot to death than lose my virginity. So I hadn't fought, I hadn't screamed, I froze. And I felt like I believed that I had to wipe that sin away. And the bishop said, you guys need to get married. And a week later, Jake told my dad he was going to marry me. My dad was like, I don't even know who you are. What's this guy's name? And I married a total stranger who had abused me.
Wow. I'm so sorry that happened to you. That sucks. That's just fucking bullshit.
You know, it could have worked out. It could have worked out if he had been nice, right? Like, okay, well, I married a total stranger. I was trafficked to this guy. I don't know him at all. I called my missionary one night and told him I'm getting married and I've never seen him again. I never saw that first fiance again. Um, but Jake was a monster at our wedding night. He was a monster. He was physically abusing me within a week. And I remember really early on in our relationship after church one Sunday, let me back up. I went to church one day by myself. Jake just decided not to go with me. And I sat through that 3 hours of church just bawling my eyes out because I had been so badly abused that weekend and was just losing my mind already. And the stake president after church saw me in the hallway and he's like, I just noticed you were crying today. Do you want to come in and talk for a minute? So we went into his office and sat down. And this man was so nice. And I know that he really, he was trying to do his best. But he's like, what's going on? How come you're crying? And I told him ways that Jake was abusing me. And, it's like, well, Thursday night, this happened and this blew up and he did this and this and this and this, and just bawling my eyes out. I had so much anxiety the whole time talking to him because Jake had dropped me off at church and was going to come back and pick me up. So I'm like, Jake's going to come back and he's going to wonder why I'm talking to the stake president. Like already I was looking over my shoulder. Like, I don't want Jake to catch me tattling to anybody about the abuse or I'm going to get it, But the stake president, he's like, have you ever heard of spousal abuse, Sister Green? And I was like, no. And he's like, what Jake's doing to you is spouse abuse. And so he opens his drawer and he has this little file cabinet and he had this little trifold pamphlet, this classic Mormon pamphlet. And on the front, it said spouse abuse. And he goes, I want you to go home and I want you to read this. And he's like, I'm going to step out in the hallway for a minute. And he comes back and he had found Jake. And he's like, so Jake, Sister Green says you're abusing her. And she told me what happened Thursday and she told me what happened this morning and she told me all this stuff. And here's a pamphlet. I want you to go home and read it. And I want you to pray and make sure that Jesus takes all that anger away from you so you don't abuse your wife anymore. And the problem with this situation here, again, is religion invading in your life in ways that it shouldn't. If I was working with a psychiatrist, if I was working with any type of trauma therapist, there's so many rules and regulations and ways in which you have to report things and ways in which you handle somebody who's being abused. No, I was working with my stake president, who I believe was some type of a doctor. He didn't know anything about domestic violence.
Yep.
For him to bring my husband in and say, Jennie says you're abusing her, he threatened my life, endangered me in horrific ways. And then his belief in the atonement's going to fix this guy. So he didn't feel like he needed to tell us to go see a therapist or report anything to the police or anything. His belief in Jesus to fix this thing um, would eventually be an absolute threat to my life. I talk about domestic violence all the time. I'm a huge domestic violence spokesperson, and there's varying levels. You know, some people have mid-grade domestic violence, some people have more extreme. Mine was life-threatening from the beginning. And Chris, I spent 24 years like that because when I
Mm,
started going to my priesthood leaders and saying, I need to get away, he's going to kill me, my life, or I'm going to kill myself. My life is miserable. I can't live like this. They would remind me, Sister Green, you can't get divorced. And if you do, you can't get married to anybody else because you're already sealed to Jake. So marriage is eternal. Pray for Jesus to take this stuff away from him. And that is how I lived for 24 years.
God, I am so sorry you had to endure that. That
Well, I
just,
got away. So,
no, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. 24 years for you. I get it. I was 25 years working for the church. I know how long that is. It's a long,
it's a long.
long time. How many kids?
We had 4 bio, 1 adopted.
Okay. Okay. Um, just because I'm curious, and jump to the chase, are they in, out? Where are your kids now?
When I left the Mormon church in 2018, my minor children, I said, you guys cannot participate in any religion until you're 18. You can go to church with friends and stuff, but religion is fake. Jesus isn't real. The Bible is bullshit. So no church for you. My 22-year-old daughter is the probably the most religious one. She's joined a Christian church, but it's a really good church, and it gives her a lot of comfort. It's not one of those high demand religion type of situations. My 16-year-old son is completely atheist, one of the best little humans that I've ever met in my life. He's just a beautiful, beautiful person. My 24-year-old daughter, she's kind of like, I don't care. She'll go to a Christian church once in a while with a friend, but I think she identifies as agnostic. My oldest son was on his mission when I left the church, and he's the only one who's still LDS, but he's a very nuanced Mormon. He's tattoos and long hair and very fluid gender roles. And I think he's just in it so that he can, get to the celestial kingdom. He's a very
Right.
nuanced member of the church. So
Cool. All right. Just curious where things landed with that, because it's, generational trauma is real, of course, and it sucks when there's a separation of abusive, to an abusive partner, and then the kids end up sticking with the abusive partner. I mean, that's just, so
Well,
it's kind of hard to
thankfully,
see
the
where things
court took
are at.
away, yeah, the court took away custody very early on. So I have
Oh,
always been
good.
the full caretaker. My kids and I were homeless, and that was how my TikTok started. My TikTok started with I was homeless, I was sleeping in the back of my car, I had medical problems because I'd never had insurance. I was completely disabled. And at one point, when I moved into my uncle's guest house, I was homebound and the pandemic was going on. So I started TikTok and I just started dumping all of my look what the Mormon church did to me. Like, I'm unemployed and homeless because they told me to be a trad wife. And so now I eat out of, Catholic food pantries. And yeah, my kids were homeless. My kids have been through so much. And what's hard about
Mm,
that is, I made these choices to get married and be a stay at home mom and do all the things, in part because I was doctrinally taught that that's what I had to do. But I thought that I was building the best future for myself and my kids. And I didn't see some of the pitfalls. I just believed that God was going to fix everything. And it
right.
was heartbreaking to see that those choices that I made as a 20, 21-year-old, 28-year-old girl would lead to my children literally sleeping in a car. And that was our only home. My
Mm,
kids not having food, my kids not having dental care, my kids not being able to see a doctor. Um, those choices that I made to become a housewife led to all of that.
right.
So it's
Well,
heartbreaking. That's
and
why
I
I do
think
everything that I do.
well, absolutely. And I think the thing about our language is that, if I might challenge a little bit what you just said, only because the
Please.
choices you made
Mhm.
They weren't choices you made. That's the problem. You were
Yeah.
trafficked. You were forced into these positions after a lifetime of being told these men are the ones who know best for you. This organization is your only path to salvation. So it's what Janja Lalich, Dr. Janja Lalich refers to as bounded choices. Your choices are
Ooh.
bound, right? You're binded. And
I've
you
never
don't
heard that
have.
phrase.
Oh yes, it's a model of thinking about cults, is the bounded choice model, and Dr. Janja Lalich developed that, and she makes it clear that yeah, sure, you have your charismatic leader and your doctrine and all the ultimate truth and all that, but the real psychological thing going on is you are being put on a pathway. There are no outlets, there are no off ramps, and the choices that are being given to you are one and done. This is what you do. This is why I stress compliance culture. You are trained and brainwashed, if you want to use that word,
Mhm.
to comply. You do what you're goddamn told to do,
Yep.
because we speak for God. And that's just how it is.
It feels like you're choosing it in the moment
It does.
because
And
I'm
that's the
opening my
part that
heart in
screws with
submission
you.
to God. Yeah.
That's right. Because they screw with your concept of agency and responsibility. Because and that's what I mean about I was going to push back a little bit on your language, not what you were saying, but how you were saying it, because we're kind of forced to use this kind of language in talking about this stuff, the choices I made, as though you were in a position to make choices. And we look back on this and we can sometimes blame ourselves for things that we were bound. We just
Mhm.
didn't have any choices. And they'll even dare to ask you, what I mean, do you choose this, as though,
Yes.
there's some option here, right? And then when the chips are down and things really go bad, you end up homeless, separated from this asshole who's abusing you. And where's the church for you then?
They were completely gone. So
Right?
one of the problems with that was I left the Mormon church, and then 2 weeks later the marriage dissolved, and I don't think that that could have happened in any other way because in that 2 week time span I'm just walking around going, oh my God, like I none of this is real. The Book of Mormon is fake, Joseph Smith is fake. Oh, then my temple covenants aren't real. So then in October of 2018, I just grabbed my ex-husband's phone one night. I woke up to go to the bathroom and I grabbed his phone just to see, is he doing anything that I should know about? And he had been in a chat room just that night where he had arranged to pick up a 19-year-old prostitute on the other side of town the next day. So I put a little tracker in his phone. I don't even know how to use an iPhone really well, right? So I leave my bedroom, I tiptoe out of the bedroom, I go to one of my teenagers, wake them up. I'm like, hey, can you please help mommy? I need to put a little tracker in this phone. Can you download an app or find my iPhone or something? I don't even know what they did. And they're like, okay, here's how you use this. And put the phone back so that he didn't know what had happened the next day. I followed my husband to a QT gas station where I videotaped a prostitute and pimp walking up to his car. And so when he got home that night, I said, this is over. The marriage is over. So it's not like we talked about, hey, this isn't working out. How can we plan for a future? Um, that night, my 24-year marriage ended. But my thought process, like even in the moment, was like, I had put up with so much for 24 years. But that night I was like, oh, there's no eternal family. My temple covenants, there's no, God doesn't give a fuck if I divorce this guy. So he's out. So don't think that I don't think I could have left the husband before leaving the church. So then now I'm not going to church, right?
Mhm.
So I get my first eviction notice and I can't buy groceries. I didn't have a bank account. I had nothing. The night that my marriage ended, I no longer had money. I could not buy groceries. I went to Trader Joe's 3 days after. I had a $43 grocery bill, a little bag of groceries, and my card was declined because he had cleaned out his bank account. Everything was gone. In 24 years, I had never had a bank account. I had never had an income. I had nothing. So I go to the Mormon bishop and it's like, yeah, I don't believe in the church anymore. I'm not coming to church, but me and my kids, we need food. We need help. And I didn't receive any help. I didn't receive anything. Like I remember going back to the bishop, and I had lived in that ward for a bit, and it's like I'm being evicted. I'm going to lose my home. And then I tried to kill myself. That's why I'm called Life Take Two.
Mm.
The night after I get out of my 2 weeks, I'd been in a coma and stuff. The night after the Mormon bishopric suddenly comes over just to check in and say hi. They're in their suit and ties, all three of them. And on their way out the door, they're like, we're going to pray for you. They did not offer to help me stay in my home. They didn't bring me any groceries. They didn't, somebody's going to help you drive the kids to school or help you with some job training or protect you from your husband who was abusing me. Nothing.
Right.
On their way out the door, one of them, as I'm standing there at the door, turns and says, I'm so glad, Sister Green, that you weren't successful because you would have gone to hell and now you have a chance to repent. And
What
that
a
was it. That
bunch
was their
of,
last words.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I can see why you left.
yeah, but that's
Anybody who
why I
tells me,
left. I didn't leave because of that.
no, fair enough. I think we've made it abundantly clear in the last hour how and why the Mormon Church is a cult. And it gets a pass from an awful lot of people in this world who buy the smiles and the shiny happy people and think, oh no, they're great guys. They educate their kids at BYU. They have this, they have that, they have the other thing. They're not culty at all. Look at how happy they all are. It's just a show. It's all a fucking facade. I just wish people could see that, you know?
Some people's lives improve. I've had friends. I had a friend who was a lifelong, childhood drug addict in high school and stuff, and ended up in Tent City here in Phoenix. Mormon missionaries came along at Tent City and gave him a Book of Mormon, and his life exponentially improved because now he has direction and he's a man, so his experience was a little bit different than mine. Um, a lot of people's lives just simply aren't what they would have been without the church. And I just don't think that we should take that risk. I don't think that any religious leader, any organization should have the power and control over people that organizations like Scientology and the Mormon church have.
Exactly.
Just
I used
do.
to tell people that I helped an awful lot of people in 25 years in Scientology. I helped people off drugs. I helped people with their marriages. I helped people with their kids. And I said after I got out, when it hit me, when I realized, what Scientology really was, that I was helping people despite Scientology, not because of it.
Hmm.
I was helping people because my mission in life is and always has been to help people. And I thought Scientology was the vehicle with which I could do that best. So that's what went all in on that. But after I got out, I realized the help I was giving people was the help that I was doing. My organization and church was only interested in their money and their compliance and loyalty. And if they weren't giving those things, there was no help for that person. And I see that in your leaving situation, where if you're not towing the line, there is no help for you. So
Chris, I survived suicide. My
no, I
family
can, yeah,
disowned
please.
me. I haven't seen my mom since I left the Mormon church. It's been 7 years. I'm raising my kids. Like I tell people, my followers know that I'm an orphan. If my whole entire family was on a charter bus and it all, drove off a cliff into the ocean, they all died. I have not had a family, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews. When I left the church, that was all gone right. So I survived suicide and then I'm homeless. Why was I homeless? Because everyone just completely stepped out of my life. When I was no longer showing up in church and I was the same person, it's not like I suddenly started like committing crimes or tattooed my face and started some, horrible organization doing bad things, murdering kittens or something,
Right.
right? I wasn't any different than I was. I just simply wasn't Mormon anymore. And my family knew that I had just survived suicide and that I was homeless. And not one of them reached out. I reached out to my Mormon bishop when I lost my home. I was moving everything into a storage unit and then I was just sleeping in my fucking car, right? Texted the bishop, can some people from the ward come and help me just move my stuff into a storage unit? I'm not moving anywhere. I'm homeless. And he said, no, no, Sister Green, we're busy. There's, nobody can help you.
Yeah.
Why don't
Good
you call
stuff,
your
you.
new Christian church? You're good on your own. Nobody has been there for me. After my ex-husband and I estimated that we had paid about $300,000 in tithing over the course of our adult lives to the Mormon church, $300,000 in tithing. I do not have retirement. Like in my savings account today, there's probably $600 at the most. I have nothing,
Yep.
and nobody was there for me.
Yep.
I think sometimes, like, if I had been that story of the person, the black sheep that was found and that came back, right? If sometime during that time span of my homelessness and my divorce, if I had like put on my Sunday dress, gotten the kids in their, Sunday best, if we had gone to church and said, "Here we are, we're so sorry, we believe in Jesus again. Oh my God, I was saying my prayers last night. I had a dream that the church is true, so here I am." They would have embraced me. They would have taken care of me. The bishop would have paid my rent. He would have made sure I was taken care of. Just the fact that I was living in the same house, but no longer believed, when that belief bubble popped for me, it was almost like the narcissistic discard. They discarded me. They were moving on to their new supply, trying to find the next convert.
Yep.
I no longer had any place in my community.
Exactly. I'm glad you used that term because I think it's 100% accurate that it was just a narcissistic dismissal.
Mhm.
Because I think that organizationally, every single cult is a group narcissist. It's if you want to use that term, right?
I
As far
agree.
as how self-centered, conceited, arrogant, completely consumed with themselves any cult is.
And
And they
not that the
just don't.
people are, not that the people are, because,
No, the
the
group as a
war,
group,
the,
it
yeah, the
manifests
group
as a group
members,
thing. Yeah.
beautiful humans, but the leaders
Yes.
at the top and the doctrines and the very system that seeks to control other people, those systems absolutely, certainly 100% are.
Yeah, exactly. My point. Thank you for clarifying because I agree with you completely. It's not a matter of each individual is a narcissist and therefore the group is. No, it starts at the top and it comes down. And you, me, we were in these groups. We are not narcissists,
Mhm.
right? We don't have that disorder, but the group manifests that disorder as a group. And your story is a just all the check boxes here, right? Of
Chris, a
like,
grown man spoke the word at the microphone, and millions of women around the world took out any extraneous earrings that we had. I
right,
have never had a second earring again.
it's just
The
ridiculous.
narcissism that it takes to think, I'm going to do this. Let me see if I can get all of the women to take their earrings out. Let me see if I can get the women to quit their jobs and come back home. Let me get this little woman, Jenny, to marry Jake because he needs a wife and she's the one.
That's right.
They're these narcissistic puppets that they're
That's right.
puppeteers that are all pulling our strings, and all of the people caught in these systems. The Mormon church from the very beginning, Joseph Smith established all of the scriptures, and most of the system that still exists today, Brigham Young, they were really careful at organizing the structure of the cult, that
Right.
the recipe that everybody would step in and follow. And it breaks my heart to see good people being manipulated by these systems. And again, some people, their lives are better. I think my son's life is probably better having his Mormon friends in the community. Some people's lives are worse, but you just don't know. It's a crapshoot.
You don't, and to the degree that a group is fulfilling a person's emotional needs, I don't have any argument with it. But to the degree it's abusing people and conditionally putting things there, well, you're a good person as long as you believe, as long as you show up on Sunday. This whole thing, these conditions and bindings are what this is all about. And to the degree, of course, that you have double binds, which is what these things are full of, right? Two things that can't both be true at the same time, but we kind of force them to be. And you're caught in this trap, this thing called a double bind, right? Jesus is love, but we must destroy all people who don't believe in Jesus, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is a double bind. This is crazy making. It makes you psychotic. This is literally the psychological anatomy of psychosis. And it is alive and well in thousands of different instances of double binds that happen within these groups every single day. And the leadership are the ones who issue them. And they don't necessarily do it on purpose. Like you said, it's
No.
so crafted and so systemic that they wake up with an upset stomach and here we go. Now we're going to have a whole new revelation, and we're going to abuse thousands of people in one breath because Jesus said so, and that's the kind of power that should not be imbued in any individual over others. No one should have that kind of power over other people. But this is how we unfortunately organize ourselves, and we're really silly about it. Um, Now, we've been talking a lot about it, pretty much exclusively about your Mormon experience, and I've been absolutely fascinated. And I know we've barely touched on even a third of, the big picture stuff here, but I have to kind of cram in. I'm sort of thinking we might talk again. At least I certainly hope so. I have so many questions for you
I'd
about
love to
just
come back.
Oh, great. Because I really love the way you talk about this stuff. And you're very, very candid about your experiences, which I appreciate. Um, there's another element to this and to your backstory, which is also very, very tied in with current events and with, our current cultural climate, and that is the MAGA side of this. And
Mhm.
I guess we need to start talking about that just really because of time. Um, how does that come into this picture?
Well, Mormonism is the OG Christian nationalist religion in America. The
Tell me
Book
about
of
that.
Mormon, the Book of Mormon itself is based on the fact that, first of all, Elohim and Jehovah created the earth, and for some reason, they had preferential treatment for the dirt that would become North America. They just loved it. It was really special to them. So that's where they put the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is in Missouri. It's called Adam on Diamond in the pure Adamic language. And coincidentally, that's just where the Mormons happen to be. So the Garden of Eden was in Missouri.
Imagine
And
that. Just
imagine
happened to
that,
be where they were.
right? And so then when they veered away from Missouri, well, that was the fallen world, right? The fallen world, they were kicked out of paradise. And then over the course of time, according to the Book of Mormon and the prophets, different people are led back to America. America is called the Promised Land. It is the God's favorite place. It's where he brings his purest of children, right? So the Book of Mormon is based on three different groups of people. The I'm sorry, it's been so long since I've been to church. The Jaredites first, way back in the day at the Tower of Babel. So the Tower of Babel collapses. God brings these people on these boats that are sort of like submarines thousands of years ago across the Atlantic Ocean to the promised land. And then we have the people that found Zarahemla, and then we have the Lamanites who would become the ancestors of the Native Americans. So little Joseph Smith back in like the early 1800s, right? Nobody can Google and fact check him. He brings this Book of Mormon to light, which says the Indians are descended from people that came out from Jerusalem that God brought to this promised land. The Book of Mormon also says that Christopher Columbus was led by God to the promised land, and that this is where Jesus Christ is going to come back. The second coming, the whole point of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Latter-day Saints, is we are preparing America for the return of the Lord, and it's eventually going to become a theocracy. Joseph Smith ran for president. He said, I am supposed to be the president of America because Jesus is coming back in my lifetime. So we are going to become, this Christian nation, and then Armageddon's going to happen, and the earth is also where we are going to live as celestial beings. It's going to be celestialized, and this is heaven. So, yeah. so,
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome.
so Mormonism is like, as a Mormon kid growing up, I always knew that Jesus was going to come back to America and that the president was just a placeholder. The Constitution was a divine inspiration, but eventually, God was going to take over America, and it was only going to be the Christians. It was only going to be the Mormons, actually. It was only going to be those people that believed in Jesus. So when Donald Trump came along and started talking about, make America great again, I just saw naturally like, oh, yeah, the Christian nationalism is the truth. That's what we should all be doing. We want to get rid of all the evil non-believers, the Scientologists, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the atheists, the Buddhists. They don't belong here anyway. America is one nation under God. This is God's promised land. That's what the Book of Mormon prophesies. The Book of Mormon prophesies like it literally talks about people going to war with swords, rivers running with blood, as all of the non-believers are murdered in these massive wars. And that's what's going to happen in the end times in America, as prophesied by the Book of Mormon. So
Oh, I wasn't aware of a chapter or a revelation in the Book of Mormon. I haven't gone that deep into
yeah,
the end times theology of Mormonism. I guess I didn't realize they had that because everybody's so
is the
pumped
type
about
and
the
shadow for the end times.
infinite
Yeah.
family thing and having your own planet and stuff. I sort of imagined that as the end goal, but I didn't ever know about this end times
Yeah.
eschatology.
Yep.
Oh
It's
boy.
intense in Revelation. So the Book of Mormon is a type and shadow for the end days, and it was preserved for these latter days so that the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would know exactly what's going to unfold in the final days. So the Book of Mormon prophesies a lot about the end times, and it's wars. It's like, the Civil War on steroids, and everybody who's unrighteous is going to be destroyed. So for me, I loved that prophecy. I'm chosen. I'm Heavenly Father's, a member of the church. I'm his daughter, preserved for these latter days. So, bring it on. I'm going to be saved.
Right. And that's again another aspect of that narcissistic attitude that
Yeah.
that sort of filters on down the line. Because I thought the exact same thing as a Scientologist, except for one big key difference, which is we don't in Scientology, we didn't have a revelation. We didn't have a Jesus is coming and we're going to kill everybody who doesn't believe us. We were just going to convert everybody. That was our thing. Well, everybody's going to get converted. They just don't know it yet. Everybody's a Scientologist. They just don't know it yet. That was our phrase, right? Everybody's a Scientologist. They just don't know it yet. So that was how we thought about things. So there wasn't a violent turn in my thing. Um, However, to be clear, because of the level of extremism in Scientology and the enemies list that Hubbard and Scientology come up with, like the entire field of psychiatry, for example, right? I
Yeah.
mean, every one of them
Antidepressants. Yeah.
absolutely suppressive, absolutely evil, right? So as far as we were concerned, all those fucking assholes could go to the back of the line, right? If they burned in
Right.
hell for a while, we would be okay with that, right? So I do get that attitude of the us versus them othering of people because we were very big on that. We even had words for them and stuff. I don't like to repeat them because they're racial slurs, but we didn't know that when we were in. We thought they were just Scientology words. Anyway, um, okay, so
And the Book of Mormon is also
wow.
racist because it teaches that anyone with brown skin is cursed from God. So I've had people argue with me lately that Mormonism is not white supremacist, and I concur that some modern Mormons no longer believe in that. So, if you're a 20 something, you may not be a white supremacist. But in my generation, Mormonism is white supremacy. It taught
Yes,
that Cain and Abel, and that curse of black skin in Africa, and the indigenous populations of the Americas were cursed with brown skin because they were less righteous, and that those I was born when black people couldn't go to the temple and get married. I
yep,
was still a child during the racist height of the Mormon church. So absolutely 100% Mormonism, their doctrine is still white supremacy. It still
absolutely.
teaches that
Oh yeah,
until
absolutely.
they delete those portions of the Book of Mormon. It literally calls white people white and delightsome, which, I mean, that worked for me. Look at me, I'm white and delightsome. And that the people that are cursed with the skin of blackness, that they're loathsome, that they're despicable. I believed that. I was indoctrinated in that. I have a Substack article called I Was a White Supremacist, where I dive into, as a 5-year-old girl, just looking at a random Navajo guy walking down the street and being like, oh, that's disgusting. Because I had been taught that he was one of the cursed Lamanites. So
Right.
just being raised in Mormonism, I was already groomed to step into MAGA. I was groomed for the racism. I was groomed for the in group and the out group. I was groomed for Christian nationalism. Jesus is going to come back and take over America.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was the next step.
Oh my God. So yeah, so
So
let's talk about that real fast because there's a lot of confusion. A lot. There's a lot of confusion on the side of people on my side of the political fence, you could say, right? Now yours too, who are very confused because we weren't brought up in an evangelical world. And the more I've learned about it, and I've been spending years and years learning about Seven Mountains theology and the whole Christian Zionism and the relationship to Israel and Judaism, and it just there's a lot of different groups who have a lot of different ideas, and yet all of them circle around this idea that Jesus is coming, they're the saved, everybody else is dying, and this justifies, in a nutshell, justifies why we should preemptively just start persecuting the hell out of these people, taking away their rights, stripping them of civil liberties, throwing them in jail, deporting them if they're the wrong color, and let's turn this place into, the Christian nation it's always been. And that's what I mean about that whole Second America thing,
Yep.
right? Is this whole underlying undercurrent of we're the Christian nation. And as you just described, right, God really has a thing about this piece of dirt. Right, this piece of dirt's way more important to God, than the folks down in Australia, right? Fuck those guys. So this being this nationalist sort of thing, that's this undercurrent, we could say, that lives and thrives very, very much throughout a lot of America. Every state is represented in this. There are even people in California who think this crap.
Yep.
So if that's the case, right, let's talk about that layer. What is it all Christian? How does MAGA, how does politics and Trump, how are you guys thinking about this stuff? Because I have a hard time explaining to people, and I think I go about it wrong because it sounds so complicated, and I'm pretty sure there's got to be simpler ways to talk about this. So take it away for me. What was your world like, and why were you in it and believed it so hard as far as the MAGA politics side of this goes?
It was just a natural outcropping of all of my religious beliefs, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I will say it's kind of interesting how that, like, Mormons and Baptists don't get along, and Mormons and evangelicals, they would never even like play basketball together, right? Like
Right.
all of these varying different and it's not all Christians. I do a lot of videos where I say it's not all Christians. I call them the American Christian extremists. They are
Right.
the rules and regulation guys, right? Like Christianity. I was a Christian for almost 5 years after I left the Mormon church. And the churches, this is just a simplification, although somebody who has a lot of expertise. So I don't have a degree in this, but I have a high level of expertise. There's the rules and regulations, Christian churches. They are we're going to enforce all the rules, make sure that nobody can have abortions. And it's, you have to do all this stuff, right? And then there's the grace. There's if you are being a good person and helping others, you've received the name of Jesus in your heart, then you're going to heaven. And that even, in the individual religious denominations, like I have Baptist friends that are very much like love and light and Jesus saved me. And then I have the Baptists who like everybody's going to hell and it's our job. So those two categories to me are the ones who are very much at odds right now. And so there's so many different people in those categories. There's
Right.
a lot of Mormons that are in those rules and regulations. All Mormons. If you're a good Mormon, your rules and regulations, it's by work you're saved. A lot of the Baptists, a lot of the evangelicals, it's those rules, it's we have to do this stuff. And that stems mostly because they are these high control groups. They're these powerful, the pastors of the mega churches, the Mormon prophets, some Catholic dioceses are very rules and regulations. So those two groups are very much divided in their ideology around America. And suddenly MAGA steps onto the scene, Donald Trump. And it's almost like all of these rules and regulations, all of the American Christian extremists came together in one group like
Right.
never before.
Right.
It's like World War III breaks out, and all of a sudden we're allied with like Russia and Cuba and like all of these people that you would never think, and we form this one big army to fight whoever the bad guy is. It's the most unlikely group of allies that you would never think that Mormons and evangelicals and Southern Baptists and the Episcopalians and whoever would come together under the MAGA umbrella. But MAGA spoke to the worst in all of those extreme, rules and regulations type of Christian churches, the Charlie Kirk type of stuff.
I see what you're saying because I knew that the Charlottesville protest, for example, where they were, kind of blood and ashes and all that stuff, or whatever they were talking about. I don't know all the phrasing, but when the white supremacists had their Charlottesville get together in Trump's first presidency, it was disparate groups of people. It wasn't all one homogenous group of racists who just descended on Charlottesville. It was about 9 or 10. And they didn't have anything to do with each other, but they wanted to mutually get together to do this whole, statue protesting thing. And it just became tiki torches and Nazis. And it was awful. And that was Charlottesville, but it's representative of what you're talking about.
Trump has unified all of the Christian nationalists.
Yes, that's the thing.
All of the Christian nationalists now. And like the Mormons, we're like these squeaky clean little families, and crumble cookie and fizz sodas and the secret lives of Mormon wives and, the hair extensions and eyelashes. But we believe that America is a promised land, that brown skin is a curse from God. And so, you wouldn't think of Mormons and skinheads coming together, but we all come together under Donald Trump.
Right.
All of us.
Exactly.
Like he is the big tent. He is the big tent that has sucked all of the Christian nationalists under that umbrella. So my Mormon upbringing and all of my beliefs and my political conventions were all a pipeline to MAGA.
Wow. What is it about MAGA? And I'm not going to focus on Donald Trump because I wanted to look at the bigger picture movement that we can talk about Donald Trump for sure, but I'm just saying there's more to it. There's a populist post-truth movement that he is at the head of. And there's a cult of personality there, but that's not all of it. It's not all cult of personality. That's just a slice of this. And I'm wondering how you think from inside that world, how this collection, this big tent was sort of created for everybody to just kind of march into it. Because prior to this movement, these people were not allied with each other and thinking we're all on common cause. Do you know how that came about?
Well, I just know from my perspective.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is a brand genius. He's not even a politician, and MAGA doesn't talk that much about politics. He's just really good at branding, like an influencer. I'm a social media influencer, and I pull people together, and he pulled us all together. He is more of an influencer than he is a president.
That's a good point.
Tweets and everything. So if you have, a good old fashioned CD player back in the day, like the 90s, it was all about our CD players. And then we'd have those stacks and racks with all the CDs, and you could plug a bunch of different CDs into the CD player.
Yeah.
If you're a cult baby and you're used to having this charismatic leader who draws a whole group of you together, and then you're all working together for a cause, and there are, costumes, clothing, my Mormon garments, the way that we used to dress, you have all the in-group stuff. You have your own little phrases. You have a mission. Knitting Cult Lady Daniela talks a lot about the mission. You're always on a mission to convert people, to prepare the world for Jesus. If you're a cult baby and you've been playing the Mormon CD in your CD player, and you're used to all those things, then you can easily put in other cults. People who are already groomed and primed for cult behavior tend to have a bunch of cults. I had multi-level marketing businesses that I belonged to. I had a yoga group that was a cult in and of itself, right? Like we met on Tuesdays and Thursdays and did yoga, and it was very cultic. And so with Trump coming along and literally forming the phrasing that people use, the branding, make America great again. He's talking about that mission. And what does that mission entail? It entails getting rid of all the people that these extremist Christians already want to get rid of, getting all of the Mexicans and illegals out of the country, making sure that the gay people don't get to be gay anymore because God doesn't like that. He's acting as a cult leader. So it was very simple for me. I already had the CD player. I'd been programmed as a cult. I just took out the Mormon cult CD for a minute,
Yeah.
and I stuck in the MAGA cult. It was
Got it.
perfectly interchangeable.
That makes so much sense. I asked you for a more simple explanation, and you gave a perfect one. Thank you for that. It's the cult of cults.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a great way of putting it. And I really, really, you've said something that nobody's ever thrown my way before, which I'm sitting here chewing on right now, and I think I'm going to be thinking about this for a while, is that he's an influencer, not a politician.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting take because he's surrounded himself with influencers now. I mean, these people from Fox News and these various people from, different social worlds are who populate our government now. And of course, religious extremists. The Supreme Court is full of them. The Congress is full of them. We've had movements going on for decades to make it that way. This is not an accident, but it's not necessarily one guy or a small group of people in a smoke-filled room who planned all this. It's a lot of circumstantial stuff that came together in a really kind of horribly timely way for us to be at the receiving end of the very worst of what America has produced, right? Christian nationalists and social media influencers. And those two things going together actually really helps me make sense of what's going on. So thank you for putting it that way.
Yeah, I have a couple videos where I've said that the only way for the left to win, the only way for the Democrats to win is to learn from Donald Trump because,
Yeah.
the pandemic, social media changed everything. Everybody got on TikTok and we have these trends that can spread around the globe in 5 minutes, right? And everybody's aware of something. Um, our leaders, our government officials have not caught up with that. And Donald Trump was the first one to step up and lean into influencing. Him tweeting all the time is genius. He's constantly out there. He's getting free airtime everywhere. To become a leader at this point, you have to be an influencer. I didn't know what any of Donald Trump's politics were. I didn't know anything about politics. I was at home baking sourdough bread and changing baby diapers and having my eyelash extensions done. That was the life of a Mormon trad wife, right?
Mhm.
I didn't understand politics until I left the church 7 years ago and started to actually learn stuff, right? But I loved how I felt. I loved being part of that movement. The hats, the when Donald Trump first said "Make America Great Again" and he branded it, that was good influencing right there. I knew that that was the guy that I was going to vote for because I had the picture of like sitting around my grandma's dinner table at Thanksgiving, and that was when America was great. That Norman Rockwell picture. I didn't care how he was going to get there. People watch my stuff on TikTok. They don't know that much about me. They see a 3-minute video. I'm influencing people. We are influenced in these little segments. People are going crazy right now about Gavin Newsom, all of my Democratic friends, like he's our great hope. Why? Because he's actually dabbling in influencing, because he's releasing videos, because he's branded himself.
Right.
You can no longer just be a really good politician behind the scenes. We live in an age now where we want that transparency, we want the message, we want the mission, we want the branding. We're buying branding. And if you are the best politician, if you're the best woman or man for the presidency, but you haven't sold us that brand and you don't have the followers, you can no longer win.
Yeah, that's
Donald
true.
Trump nailed that.
Yeah,
He's
that's all
only an
true.
influencer. He's not a leader.
Well, that's for sure. He is definitely not a leader. I have to wonder about a few things that I know people, have been wondering about for a long ass time. It's probably one of the number one things that comes up when, when you look at left wing social media, you see this constant refrain about the hypocrisy. How can these people believe in Jesus and yet trample half of what he says in the New Testament, right? How can people believe in love your neighbor, turn the other cheek, and want to kill their neighbor or at least deport them? And who cares if they die in the process? How can it be that these people can call themselves Christians and think God loves them while they literally spew hate towards anybody who doesn't look and sound like them all day long, which is what many of these
Mhm.
Christian social influencers do. There's no question about that. This isn't a controversial point. These are horrible people who use a
Yes.
Bible to beat up other people. And yet they call themselves and think of themselves as good Christians. And there are people on the left who are very good Christians. Like you said, this isn't all Christians. There's a ton of Christians out there who are not this, who don't personify this, who don't hate other people. And this is where we get really confused. What are we supposed to, how are we supposed to think about these people? They call themselves Christians, but they're hate-filled bigots. How do we reconcile this? And this has been a real point of confusion for people over the years since MAGA has formed up.
I don't understand why it's confusing. The answer is simple. You follow the money.
Tell
You
me.
just follow the money. People, I didn't listen to Jesus. I didn't care to read the Bible that much. In fact, I was really uncomfortable with the Bible until I left the Mormon church, and then I became Christian, and then I deconstructed the Bible. And I broke up with Jesus 2 years ago, just so everybody knows my bias. I am an atheist now. But I would read the Bible and I'd be really uncomfortable with it. Again, like you're talking about that, the cognitive dissonance that you have where you have, oh, I should love other people but hate gay people. Like, how do I reconcile that? I would read actual Jesus quotes, just read the Jesus-y parts of the Bible. And what Jesus was asking me to do was so contrary to everything that I was being taught in church that I didn't even like it. He seemed like a wimp. He'd use the words, I am meek and mild. And it's like, meek and mild. I was listening to my bishops. I was listening to the prophet. I was listening to my seminary teacher and all of these other things. And then as a Christian, I wasn't reading the Bible throughout the week. I would go to church on Sunday, and my pastor of a church of 5,000 people, this huge megachurch that's bringing in so much money every week, these pastors are the ones who are telling us what Christianity is.
Right.
The American Christian church has nothing to do with Jesus. I do believe that there may have been a historical rabbi named Yeshua. So let's go on the assumption that there was a real dude at some point who the Jesus figure was based off of, right? Who had a philosophy that a couple of people potentially, wrote down. Let's say that there was a historical Yeshua. That historical Yeshua, this ancient Jew who was such a warrior for the downtrodden. He sat down with prostitutes and lepers and single moms and the adulteress at the well. And he hated the religious people. He hated shows of wealth. He hated war. This kind, compassionate, he would have been a leftist. He probably would have had like a nose ring and purple hair. I don't know, he could have been LGBTQ. If we brought Jesus to life today, if we brought Yeshua to life, he would be nothing like the Jesus that's being taught in churches.
Right.
Christianity of today is that Jesus is fake. He is not in any way scripturally based. And to me, I think that the only way that any nugget of the philosophy of the Rabbi Yeshua can continue in the future is if Christians, and I tell people all the time, this is what I literally did. When I broke up with Jesus, at first it's like, well, I still want to read parts of the Bible, right? I took my X-Acto knife and I cut out the entire Old Testament and I threw it in the trash. The Old Testament, these warlords from thousands of years ago still impacting our society today. The Corinthians woman, right? That impacted my life today. In the 2020s, that Bible was influencing who I was. Those goat herders and people who murdered, they come out of Egypt, they go into Canaan, they murder everybody. They're murdering everybody. That shouldn't be read anywhere. To have a religion based on the Old Testament, we have to stop. That stuff can no longer carry forward into the future. And then everything after, like, Yeshua dies, right? Take that X-Acto knife, cut out everything that comes after that. Paul. It's just sad to me that this man, who I do think was a real person, who spent his life just trying to make the world a better place and being very outspoken. Yeshua was an influencer too. That's what rabbis did. They were influencers. They were leading a way. They were carving out a path. It's sad that his message was filtered through Paul, who was a Roman, filtered through Constantine, through the Byzantine Empire, filtered through the Catholic Church, through the monks and popes, and all of these people who rose to power, and filtered today through pastors of mega churches who live in multi-million-dollar homes, who have houses across the country, who have these beautiful vehicles, who like, it's just money, money, money. Let's follow the money. Why do we have this division of two Americas with these really nice Christians? My partner, Kevin, is a Lutheran. He's so sweet. It's just Jesus loves me. Jesus loves you. That's his life. God holds the whole world in his hands. That's his religion. And then the Charlie Kirks of the world.
Right.
Why do we have that? You follow the money. Because if I was a pastor and I wanted people to come to church, the most effective tool, as you know, of a cult leader is to have the in group and the out group and to have you always at war against somebody. Because if we step into a time of peace, then we no longer need them. We're not going to write out that check. We're not going to pay our tithes and offerings. We don't need them anymore. And I know that for a fact, Chris, because when I stopped believing in religion, when I realized that it was me and a bunch of other messy humans that were in this together, and that I better build a tribe and rely on my neighbors and my partner and my friends and my bestie. When I stopped having a leader that I followed, and the highest power in my life is my gut, it's my intuition. It's the science and reason and research of the great minds that have come before me. When I got rid of that pastor and that prophet and stepped into this atheist, beautiful, harmonious life that I live now, I never paid another dime in tithing. I've never made offerings to anybody. I simply don't need them. My life is a million, billion times happier than it ever was because I live harmoniously with the earth around me, with my community, with my partner, with myself.
Right.
And they know that. Every good pastor knows they have to keep you always fighting against the enemy or the checks stop coming. It's just as simple as that.
No, you got it. You nailed it. Thank you. I really, really, really appreciate you cutting right to the heart of the matter on that. I really do. Because it really clarifies that we are dealing with a lie. We're dealing with a facade. We are dealing with an illusion. These are not the American Christian extremists, as you say, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are not Christians. They don't respect Christ. And that's what's so amazing. I mean, you literally described it, and you're not the first person who said those things. And I get it. I get it. And it's hard to get, though, because they fight tooth and nail to present themselves as something they absolutely positively are not. And it really isn't a whole lot different from Scientologists. Do you know Scientology? Do you know the Church of Scientology has produced the best, and I mean anywhere, the best educational materials on human rights? CDs, whole educational programs for classes on teaching human rights, the history of human rights, where they come from, where the whole concept of it came from, what they are, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I'm saying it's top-notch stuff. I've never seen anybody else produce human rights educational materials for children better than what the Church of Scientology has produced. And there is not an organization in this world that violates people's human rights on a daily basis more often than the Church of Scientology. It's a kind of cosmic irony that we live in these dual-faced this world where people present that way. And so that's why I wanted to highlight the Scientology thing, because I know my audience will get that right away. But what I'm realizing right now, and what you're hitting me with that I appreciate in its simplicity, is the hypocrisy isn't hypocrisy. These people aren't Christians. They just think they are. They call themselves that. It's Christian in name only. But it really is about money, isn't it?
I did a controversial TikTok video a while back. I went down to Mexico for vacation and I bought a Gucci bag. That was not a Gucci bag. I paid $60 for it. It was nice leather. It was beautiful. Bright blue, Tiffany blue Gucci bag.
Yep.
Because I lived in a country club neighborhood where it was all about the purse you took to church on Sunday, right? And that purse had the little Gucci zipper on it. It had the Gucci satin inside. Everything was Gucci, Gucci, Gucci. It was not a Gucci. It didn't matter how precisely they had stamped that Gucci into the leather. It was a fake fucking purse. It wasn't Gucci. I do not care how big you put that cross outside your church. I don't care how many times you say the name Jesus, how many hymns about Jesus you sing. If you are not actually doing what Yeshua in that very little, the red letterists, I think, are the only place that it's at. The red letter Christians, they are probably the only people who are actually doing what Jesus said to do. They're the only true followers of Yeshua. If you are not doing what he did, then it ain't Gucci. It's not Gucci.
That's right. There it is.
Like, it's a brand. It's like you've bought the franchise, but you're not even selling what the franchise owner said you're supposed to sell.
No, it's that much. It's that bad. And when you pointed out, and again, you aren't the first person to say this, but it's finally clicking off for me a little bit in some aspects of this. You're not even familiar with I mean, you can quote the Bible, you can talk to me about the Bible, but you're not really paying attention to the Bible. Your effort and your attention is on what the dude who's talking is saying. And they say they're telling you what's in the Bible. They tell you they're speaking for Jesus, but the messaging is exactly the opposite. And it's really interesting because I wonder, would you go so far as to agree with me on this if I were to go this far out and say, look, it sounds to me like this is a hate group, a very, very
Absolutely.
focused hate group?
Well, I don't know, Chris. In the history of the world, have there ever been religious hate groups who've done terrible things and committed atrocities?
A little
We just
bit.
don't like to call our own stuff what it is.
Well,
It's really hard to
yeah.
your your own culture, your own community. We
Yeah.
don't like to look in a mirror. We like to look through binoculars at everybody else. Like, it's really easy. And that's for me as a Mormon extremist. I was racist. I was hateful. I was totally fine. Like, if all of the non-members around me, the Baptists and everybody, if it came to war, I was I would fight them all to the death. That's fine. I was fine with all of that. I was a monster, right? But
Yeah.
I would watch videos of like the terrorists or Ayatollah Khomeini style terrorists over in the Middle East, and it's like those guys are crazy because we like to look through binoculars at other people. We don't like to look at ourselves because we feel good doing what we're doing and
Right.
we want to keep doing it. So, absolutely, this new American Christian extremism is 100% a hate group. And it is in no way representative of that man in the Bible who's been buried by the pastors and the priests and the popes and the prophets and the bishops and everybody else. By the way, a bunch of men, a bunch of I meant
Mostly.
rich men. Rich
Yeah.
men in power over other
Rich.
people. Yeah.
That's right. I could not agree with you more. I think it becomes a facade to even call it religion at a certain point, especially with its melding with politics now. We really have a sort of a socioeconomic movement.
Mhm.
But fair enough. We can use
But we
religion.
put we
I'm
we
saying
stuck Gucci on it, right? It says Gucci.
that's
It
right.
must be a Gucci. It doesn't matter if you
That's
bought
right.
it in Mexico on the beach with a guy that just has the Gucci's on a stick. That's
That's right.
that's fine. It says Gucci. Must be Gucci. It's not
Must be
Gucci.
Gucci. We're gonna all call it Gucci, even though we know. No, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. Um, I think we're going to move toward wrapping up right now because I think we've brought enough clarity in 2 hours of talking here. This really went by fast. I'm, you're one of my favorite ex-Mormons.
Did I make the list?
You did.
I've been a little bit of a jelly bean whenever you have ex-Mormons on, and it's like Chris doesn't know me because I feel like I could make the list.
I think you can. No, you are awesome. I really appreciate your candor. And I know you've been to the darkest of places with this stuff, and I get it. Believe me, I do. I
Oh,
get
yeah,
it.
I can imagine.
It's yeah, even the all of it. I get it. Been there, done that, and it's
Only a
and it's
fellow
it's a
cult baby. Us fellow cult babies, we get
that's
that.
right.
We
That's
speak the
right.
language.
Isn't there kind of an understanding? Isn't there kind of a thing that happens when your eyes open up about that? Because it's not just realizing the corruption or the awfulness of the group you were part of, it's realizing how vulnerable we are.
Mhm.
It's realizing how vulnerable everybody is and how the people who don't have that moment don't see that. They're filled with hubris. They're
Mhm.
filled with the arrogance and certainty of their belief. And we who were there know what that feels like. And we try so hard because they don't know what this feels like.
Right.
They only know where they're
Mm.
at, and the certainty, which is probably the key word of all of this, because it's the thing that drives so much of this, is I'm so morally, righteously sure that I am right, that I know your life, not you, but
Yep.
those folks out there, that their lives are meaningless. They don't mean anything compared to my righteous life, right? And
Chris, you're triggering me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But that's it, isn't it? That's the
It
attitude.
is.
That's
Yeah.
really at the core of it. It really is. It's the ultimate othering. And I just hate that we do that. But
We have to stop it.
you can't really see it till you've come out of it. And once you see it, you'll never unsee it.
Hmm.
Well, I actually shouldn't even say that, because some people do recede, go back, but fortunately I don't think it's the majority. There's a lot, but we're catching up on that. So I think if we continue to educate, inform, let people know, share our stories, put it out there, I think we will wake more people up. I don't think it's a hopeless venture. I don't think we're on a hopeless battle. What do you think?
If I thought it was hopeless, I'd just quit everything that I'm doing and I'd move to Finland at this point, buy myself
Right?
some nice winter gear and just get the hell out of here and skedaddle. Um, I absolutely have hope that we can turn everything around right now. I think
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work. And the thing is that right now, we need to cash out our comfort in order to bring about change. So, yeah, like I could be laying at the pool today. I think it's 102 here in Tucson today. It's a beautiful day. I could be laying out at the pool. I'm not. You're not paying me. I'm not getting paid to do half the stuff that I do. I'm doing this because I have to get to work, and this is the way that I do it. And I
Yeah.
guess that's my call to action for anybody that's listening. Reach out to those people around you that you don't know, get to know your neighbors. We have to start building back our tribes. Start emailing your senators. There's not hardly a day of my life that I'm not emailing my senator, my mayor, the representatives, senators in other states, the White House, whoever. Um, Make sure that you're registered for vote, do those things that you need to do. And we have to start speaking back and bringing about change, like whatever that looks like for you. We have to fight as hard as Republicans are. Right now, MAGA is pulling out all the stops to make sure that everybody's registered to vote. They are going to get control of every state in the nation, and we'll never be able to get MAGA out of power.
That's right.
I feel like we're 2 weeks away from the Handmaid's Tale. So I have hope, but I don't believe there's a God out there in the universe who's just going to take care of everything. It's up to us.
That's right.
Imagine if everything that happened in Germany had never happened. And it wasn't even in our history books because people had banded together and prevented it. What if we band together now and prevent catastrophe? Did you hear Hegseth say that women can no longer be in combat in the military? That was the new thing just last night.
I didn't
So,
hear that part
yep,
of his ridiculous
yep,
address to.
yeah,
I'm
because
very
women can't carry
pontificating.
somebody. So women are out of combat.
Yeah, these guys they really do want to throw us back in the Stone Age. And something I want to
Yeah,
point out is that to a hate group, everybody else is a hate group. And these
yes,
guys are right now, pulling the levers of power. So they're trying to alter our entire culture to make out that they're the peaceniks and they're the good guys and everybody else is a hate group. And it's basically the same thing as if you put the KKK in charge, or
yeah.
something like that. Like it's
Oh,
like
yeah. I have
that
friends
right
and
now.
family that were KKK and they were nicer than these guys. So
Right? Right? At least Daryl Davis can talk some sense into, some KKK guys.
these
I
guys
mean,
make the Klan look nice.
right? They really do. And Pete
Yeah.
Hegseth is a drunk asshole and an absolute tyrant, right? And it seems that kind of attracts like when it comes to this awful MAGA stuff. So,
It does. So we
ugh,
can't just sit back and rest right now.
no.
We've got to work. I believe that we can turn things around.
Yep.
I'm being really conscientious about my spending. If we pull the rug out from under the billionaires, the financial rug, that changes things.
Yep.
We've got to start getting to work and actually fight for our future, fight for our children's future. I have 7 kids with mine and Kev's. one daughter-in-law and a grandbaby. And I do not want to leave them this fucked up version of America.
That's
We're
right.
writing the future today that they're going to live out tomorrow.
Exactly. Thank you.
So,
Thank you for that. I 100% on board. 100%. Folks out there, we're going to wrap up because we're just going to keep going at this, and I'm just going to put a stop to it because we got to stop at some point.
gotta
So
stop.
yeah, so let's do it. You guys know I could rail on and on and on and on and on, and I'm just gonna stop now. Jennie, I really want to thank you for not only being on the show today, but for the work you're doing, for taking the time, for putting your voice out there. I know it's not easy. I know there's not a lot of return on investment some days. Been there, done that. I've been doing this for 13 years myself. I get it. Some days are better than others, but let's just keep fighting the good fight. And
Mhm.
I really look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I was thrilled. It's always nice to talk to a Scientologist. So
Awesome. Awesome. All right, folks.
you're
Uh,
fabulous.
support the channel, support the show. Oh, now, where exactly do people go to find you? I will have links below here, but where do they go to connect with you?
YouTube, I am Life Take Two. That's all spelled out. So that's my hub for everything now. You'll find my Substack and everything else that I do over there on that YouTube. And I am dropping my book club this month. We're going to educate people. If they're going to defund education, I'm going to fund education. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
yep, Life Take Two.
All right, cool.
Thanks,
Folks
Chris.
there. Oh, okay, good. Watch her show, subscribe to her channel, check out her work. It's awesome stuff. And on that happy note, I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.